And welcome back. I'm Lauren, and it's been a minute since the last time I journaled about my reread of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, but I'm excited to jump back into it. Today I'm going to be talking about my process of journaling about Chapter 6, The Journey from Platform 9 3/4. I'll also be sharing a bunch of my thoughts on the chapter as someone who has read this series many times. Keep in mind that I may mention spoilers for later in the series because I occasionally find clues I hadn't noticed before, and that's one of the reasons why I love the Harry Potter books so much. Now, when I was coming up with what to do visually for this chapter's spread, I knew that I wanted to focus on two elements: the train ride and the first year's boat ride up to Hogwarts Castle. Thanks to some wonderful viewers, I now have some Harry Potter stickers to use in this journal, and while I liked a few that were train-themed, I decided to make a paper cutout style Hogwarts Castle for the bottom right corner of the spread. To make this, I started with a sketch and then cut out the different shapes for the water, the mountain, and the castle itself using 3 colors of cardstock I had around. I adjusted things as I went along to make them fit, and anytime the cutting step got a little tricky, I switched from scissors to this Fisker's fingertip kraft knife. This is not the first time I've used this tool to cut out Hogwarts Castle, and it probably won't be the last. Once I was happy with the shapes, I started attaching them to the pages, letting the paper overlap the edges of the journal. Then I trimmed it off so it would line up exactly with the edges of the pages. And that's what that ended up looking like. Now I know that it needed some boats, but I wasn't really happy with the more realistic sketches I was doing, so I ended up making them into tiny origami-like paper boats instead. I traced the lines where the folds would be because when I actually folded them, it made them too thick and heavy. I feel like this came out better than I was expecting. Next, I added 2 super old stickers from back before the movies came out, one with the train and one that has a pile of old trunks. That way I have the bigger elements where I want them to go, and I can fill in my notes about the chapter all around them. Then I added my title, Chapter 6, The Journey from Platform 9 3/4. Now, when this chapter starts, we are yet again reminded that Harry had a whole month left with the Dursleys. How? How did he get through that? I don't even understand how it's possible. I feel like I forgot about this because the movie goes over that part so quickly. But yeah, I can't believe it. I can't believe that Hagrid would just send him home with the Dursleys after taking him all over Diagon Alley on the last chapter. I'm a little bit torn here because before Harry found out that he was a wizard, he was living in this awful situation, but he didn't know that he had anything outside of it. He didn't have anything to look forward to, and that's got to be awful. But knowing that you could be somewhere else, knowing that you have this money that you could be using, knowing that a magical world is just waiting for you around the corner has to be a little bit difficult. But maybe it helped in some ways. Maybe having that hope made it easier to get through his last month at home. It says that they ignored him, half terrified, half furious, and I wrote down a shortened version of the quote. Although this was an improvement in many ways, it did become a bit depressing after a while, which is totally understandable. One of my favorite things about rereading this series is all of the tiny details that I usually just forget about. One of them that I wrote down was that Harry named Hedwig from the book A History of Magic. There was somebody named Hedwig in that book. Who were they? Do we know? I'm gonna have to look it up. So when the time finally comes, the Dursleys actually drive Harry to King's Cross Station, surprisingly without much fuss, but they do just abandon him between platforms 9 3/4 laughing. It seems that they believe that nothing's going to happen and there is no platform 9 3/4. But if that was the case, did they just leave him there to be homeless forever? I don't know. I'm not surprised. Luckily, the Weasleys show up. He meets them for the first time, and Molly helps him onto the platform, and the twins help him lift his trunk onto the train, which is really great. This is a scene that I remembered pretty clearly, and I love it. After he's all settled on the train, the Weasleys actually figure out that he's Harry Potter, and he overhears them freaking out about it, which is kind of funny. Ginny, who's too little to go to Hogwarts, still wants to go onto the train to see him. Very in character. I love it. Next, I hand-lettered this quote. He didn't know what he was going to, but it had to be better than what he was leaving behind. I used faux calligraphy to write this out, which basically means that I wrote it in just regular script and then I added weight to all of the downstrokes to make it look more like calligraphy. This is a really good technique to use if you don't have a brush pen or maybe you're not super good at more traditional brush lettering. I find that I have a little bit more control over it when I do it this way, and I end up pretty much liking how it turns out. Once Harry is all settled in on the train, he meets Ron, and one thing that I really like about their initial interactions with each other is that they both seem to know that they can trust one another. They're both very honest in this first conversation. They don't feel like they need to be someone they're not. They are just excited to be going and maybe just a little bit nervous, and I think they sense that about one another. Ron seems to be really happy with someone who isn't his family, and Harry shares his doubts about his magical ability. Then, of course, Harry buys a ton of candy, and he wants to share it with Ron. It says he never had anything to share before, or indeed anyone to share it with. Here I made a note to myself that until we learn his name, Neville Longbottom is referred to as the Toadless Boy because he's lost his toad. Once Hermione comes in and joins them, I actually noticed something interesting here. She quickly mentions that she's already memorized all of their textbooks and that she just hopes it will be enough. She, like Harry, worries that she'll be behind because she was raised by muggles, and I find that to be really interesting. Initially, I feel like Harry doesn't relate to Hermione very much, but that little detail shows that they actually do have a lot in common. Hermione also takes the time to list off all of the books that Harry is mentioned in, which is kind of funny. Moving on to the next page up here, Draco, Crabbe, and Goyle come in and they almost get in a fight. This is the scene where Draco insults Ron and tries to make friends with Harry. He had actually found out which seat he was in and came by specifically for this. Obviously, he recognizes him from Madame Malkin's robe shop in the previous chapter. So this is all quite different from the way that it went down in the movies. So I do like to take note of those changes as well when I'm rereading the books. Eventually they arrive and Hagrid calls the first years to the boats. This is something that they only get to do during their first year, so it's very exciting. They turn a corner and that's where they get their first look at Hogwarts across the lake. The boats move on their own, which is very cool, and then they arrive through a curtain of ivy in an underground harbor before heading up to the castle. For my last little bit of notes, since I don't have a whole lot of room left, I hand-lettered another quote kind of around the castle. Hagrid raised a gigantic fist and knocked 3 times on the castle door. These are the last words in this chapter, and they reminded me of being younger and reading this for the first time and how I never wanted to just stop at the end of a chapter because they all pretty much end on cliffhangers. It's kind of brilliant. It's maybe one of the reasons why so many young kids have no problem getting through these super long books. They're just page turners. They're exciting and they make you want to continue reading more. And to just fill in on the little bit of empty space that I ended up with at the end here, I cut out 3 paper stars using the same color that I used for the boats earlier and glued them kind of around the castle. And that is my journaling spread about my reread of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Chapter 6. I'm very happy with the way this turned out. One of the reasons why I started this project is to try new things with my journaling. I tend to do the same kinds of things all the time in my personal journal, and I feel like I'm learning so much just from pushing myself to try new and creative ways to fill up these pages. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on this chapter in the comments below. Having intense book discussions with Harry Potter fans is one of my favorite things ever. If you'd like to know more about the supplies I used in this video, I'll list them in the video description below. I have a bunch more episodes of this series here on my channel as well, so check out my playlist to watch those if you aren't caught up already. And while you're here, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I make lots of nerdy and creative videos, and I'm also hoping to make lots more Harry Potter journaling episodes in the future. I have a feeling that this is going to get even more fun as it goes along, and I've already had some folks requesting a flip through when it's all finished, so I have a long way to go. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.